Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you so much for reaching out to invite me. It's very emotional to be here. I could see lots of emotion on other people's faces. 25 years is an extraordinary achievement, and I've only been part of this since 2014, although I feel like my whole life has been part of the movement, the collective movement of people who care about children. And even though I'm not in the European Parliament anymore, my work with children continues. And I was looking at the programme that you've got today, and I'm going to stay with you all afternoon because we must all always continue to be learning, and not just speaking, but listening and taking account of what children are saying and learning from each other, making alliances between ourselves. And so I feel that actually what's happening today is useful for the work that I continue to do. So my engagement with the Alliance for Childhood began when I was first elected in 2014, and the Parliament was constituting its cross-party intergroups. And I remember Anna Head, who is a wonderful Swedish MEP, saying to me, you must come and be part of this. You must come and put your hand up. You must come and volunteer, actually, to facilitate this group. It's really, really important. And I think Anna had already realized that my background as an artist, somebody who was a creative practitioner who'd been working using a lot of different art forms, particularly drama, however, using a lot of different art forms for social change in a wide variety of settings, not just in really deprived areas in the UK, but in places around the world. Anna, I think, had already felt that she had an ally. And that is important. You have an alliance, and in the Parliament, you need to find allies in order to progress really important work that puts the most vulnerable people at the centre of change, of positive change. And I had never been in politics before, but when I walked into that room and saw many of you, I actually felt at home. And I thought, I think I can do my job. If my job is to work with these people and to stand up for these people and always to be an advocate, then actually my job will be a pleasure. And my job will be, it will be a continuation of what I already did for my life. And I think when I was elected, 8 years ago, I'm trying to work out how long ago that is, but I was in my mid-50s, and I was already since I was a teenager had been working with children. So, you know, this felt like a very natural thing. And for me, it was an anchor. It was an anchor for me in my work in the European Parliament. And it impacted my work enormously. So when I would tell people about the different things that I was doing, the different committees that I was on, I would also talk about these other responsibilities that I'd assumed. And I described the QoC group, the Quality of Childhood group. I said, it does what it says on the tin. It is about quality of childhood. You know, that is exactly what it's about. And for me, it was so clear that that's why we were all there. And I know that when I was given the huge responsibility of being the rapporteur for the report on intercultural dialogue, diversity and education for fundamental values, which was the Culture and Education Committee's response to the Charlie Hebdo murders and the Danish attacks, I knew again that my friends in this alliance, my friends in the QoC, would be the people who would help me make the case for the important policy recommendations that we wanted. And of course, none of those policy recommendations would be strange to any of us in this room right now. They were common sense, weren't they? They were about inclusion, about education, about sharing, about learning, about putting children and curiosity and imagination and hope at the heart of the work. I also used my relationship with the people represented here today when I was fighting for the child guarantee. And we had a lot of trouble getting people to understand how important that was as a rights-based initiative. But I always felt, again, very grounded and was able to talk in very concrete terms about what we were trying to do. Also, when we were trying to push for access to education for refugee and migrant children as well, because many of the organizations that have been working with these children on the ground. And so again, I could speak with experience and knowledge about the importance of refugee education. And individual organizations and people that I met during my time have continued to be extremely important for me, and I wanted to mention a few of them. So the Korczak Association being one, it was incredible to be invited to the meeting in Poland where the Child Ombudsman spoke, and where I was surprised but really pleased to be presented with an extraordinary and unique painting. And that made me make relationships with groups back home in the UK. And I suppose that's another thing, that what you were doing when you were coming together in those meetings in Brussels and elsewhere in Europe were also giving me new contacts, new ideas, new people, new networks to engage with back home in the UK. And my work with International Child Press continues. I am now a volunteer with International Child Press. Elise Sitchoff, I'm not sure if she's on the call today, but she has become a lifelong friend, a soul sister. I describe her as we're doing amazing things together. We've recently had meetings at her Lifelong Learning Centre in Amsterdam. Shanti, you were there, which was wonderful. And I'm bringing Elise to the UK to help make the very first child newspaper in Birmingham as part of the Commonwealth Games, where I am now the arts lead for Commonwealth Connections, the international education project that is being run by the Commonwealth Games. And so diverse lens, maybe just a few words about diverse lens, which is your theme today. The diverse lens that I see before me and I see in the workshop program today is not just about diversity regarding demographics or socio-economic factors, but the diversity of issues that confront us today: climate change, war, migration, inequality, poverty. And the diverse lens is not just about European children in the EU, but also about children everywhere who are all our children. And also, for me, there is a huge importance, continuing importance, about creative approaches to dealing with these many challenges. I can see in the workshop so many wonderful creative ways of addressing these complex intersecting issues. And I welcome that, because children are inherently creative, they're inherently curious, and they continue to demonstrate to us what we once were and what we still can be. So, creating engaged citizens capable of critical thinking and not afraid to confront decision makers with challenging questions and uncomfortable truths must continue to be a mission for all of us. As John Lewis, the late American congressman, said, we need to make good trouble. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Julie, for those words. And I'm saying we're very grateful for how you supported us in the Parliament and continue to work with us. That's great. Thank you. So we'll move now to Tim and children and indicator species for cities.
Thank you very much, Christopher. I'm very pleased and honoured to be here. In fact, checked that my contact with the Alliance for Childhood goes back to Mikhail Mathes inviting me to a seminar in Brussels about 15 years ago, and it's clear to me since that the Alliance has pulled together an impressive, effective, and seasoned and committed group of advocates for children. I'm pleased to have engaged with it, and it was particularly poignant to see Joan Allman featuring in the moving montage at the start, and anyone who was lucky enough to meet Joan will know how hard she worked to raise the issue of children's well-being, and in particular children's play, in a country where that was pretty hard work. So I'm going to talk to you about child-friendly urban planning. I'm going to show you some slides, and let's see if I can get this.
You should normally,
happen.
Okay, great, thanks.
And I need to do that, and I need to go back to the beginning. I'm hoping you can now see a holding slide of a nice image of a housing project in Cambridge. So yeah, I'm going to really set out what I mean by this term child-friendly urban planning and why I think it matters. And I'm really giving you a whistle-stop tour of a book of mine that came out last year, which is called Urban Playground: How Child-Friendly Planning and Design Can Save Cities. And if you've ever heard me speak before, chances are you will have seen my next slide. And what this slide does is it illustrates what you might call the roaming range or the home territory of 4 children. But they're 4 children who grew up in the same city, but over 4 generations. And each circle is their home territory at the age of 8. So the big blob that you can see that takes up most of the map, that's the home territory or the roaming range of the great-grandfather in this family, who could travel 10 kilometers or 6 miles across the city on his own as an 8-year-old. And then you can see that the circle's shrinking until the most recent yellow dot here. This is the son in this family who's actually allowed to walk to the end of his street. And we know, in fact, that's more license to roam, more everyday freedom than most 8-year-olds have in England. So I think why I use this image is that it encapsulates a fundamental, a profound and underexplored change in the nature of childhood, which I call the shrinking of children's horizons. And now there's lots of reasons why that's happening, but one of them is because of the built form of our towns and cities. And I think that this encapsulation speaks to not only children's appetite for experience and the importance of what you might call a rich and varied diet of childhood experience, but also to the kind of moves we need to see and the kind of changes that we need to see to make our habitats, our human habitats, more child friendly. Because when we think about those elements of the built environment that we do create, especially for children, that we build with children in mind, all too often they really leave us. I'm not quite sure how to put this, but there's a large gap between the appetite for experience that we know all children have and the offers that we make for them for their play. And so what I want to do in the book is to offer a different view of what makes human habitats work for children, and in particular to move well away from the idea that what we need to do is create reservations, even if they might be better reservations than this one. So in my work, I have looked at about a dozen cities around the world, mainly in Europe and in North and South America, that have taken a holistic and progressive view of what makes the built form of cities work. And I've been lucky enough to go and visit and study some of these cities thanks to support from the Churchill Fellowship and the Urban 95 program from Bernard Van Leer Foundation. And so just to bring out that my work has a municipal focus, because I believe that it's at that local level that there's the most possibility, the greatest possibility of change. And in my work, I offer a vision of a child-friendly place, and I'm just going to outline this vision to you now. And really, it has two dimensions. So a place that works well in physical terms, in spatial terms for children. First of all, there's a lot of choice and variety. So there are places to play, there is contact with nature, there's sports and recreation opportunities, children can see their friends. So that idea of things to do is one dimension, but that on its own is not enough. And this is where the insight comes in from that map I just showed you, that we also need to pay attention to children's mobility. How easy is it for children to get around that neighborhood? Crucially, to get around on their own. And it's only where you have both a lot of choice and variety and high levels of independent mobility that you're in that child-friendly quadrant. So I'm just going to expand on some of these other quadrants that you can see in this diagram. So you can imagine a neighborhood where the neighborhood is frankly dull, but also difficult to get around. Places are far apart, there's poor walking and cycling networks, and that's the kind of image that you can see. This is an American suburb. You can imagine a place that it may not be that difficult for children to get around. There are no obvious hazards, but that there's, again, a dearth of things to do. And somewhere like a refugee camp might be an example of that. And that's an image of one, the Zaatari camp in Jordan. Conversely, you can imagine, and there are many cities that on the face of it appear to have a high variety of offers and activities, but it's very difficult for children to get around. And I saw an example myself when I visited the city of Recife in Brazil. Now you can see the beachfront here, like other Brazilian cities, very lively and active, and lots of things to do. But you can see those tower blocks in the background. So even just a couple of blocks back from the seafront, those tower blocks are mainly middle-class families live in those, but the children's lives in those families are almost entirely lived in various containers within their apartments or in cars, taking them around the city, dependent upon adults. So for those children, the beach may as well be miles away, and they're in effect living in a kind of glass house. And as I say, it's only where you have both a lot of choice and variety of spaces, and it's easy for children to get around on foot or by bike or on wheels, that you're in a genuinely child-friendly place. So it's a substantive vision of the spatial qualities that make somewhere work well for children. And I flesh out that vision by sharing what I suggest in my book is perhaps the ultimate child-friendly neighborhood. There's a question mark there, it's a provocation, but this is the eco-suburb of Vauban, which is on the outskirts of Freiburg in Germany. And you can see from the aerial, it's relatively dense, it's apartment living, it's a very green mixed-use development, about 6,000 people live here. But crucially, what marks Vauban out is it is to all intents and purposes car-free, very low levels of car ownership, and any family that does own a car is expected to keep it parked in a peripheral car park. And what that means is that the whole of the space between the buildings then becomes available for public use. So here's an example of the play features in the district. There aren't really very many dedicated playgrounds. Instead, what you see is playful offers woven throughout the outdoor space of Vauban. The streets are, as you might expect, lively, full of people of different ages getting around, and complete absence of cars, both parked and moving. Here's a couple more images of some of the types of varieties of public space, and also bringing out the good relationship between the buildings and the spaces between them. So that informal oversight that we know makes places feel socially safe. And then here's just some images, firstly of one of those three car parks, and secondly, great public transport connecting to the wider city, which means, of course, there's less need for car ownership anyway. So that's the kind of picture I'm offering for you. And now I just want to summarize briefly why I think this vision and this approach matters. And this is, again, not just based on my views, but on the views of the cities that I visited. And when I spoke to city leaders, the kind of answers they gave to the question, well, why are you doing this? Why are you making these changes? Fell under three broad headings. So there was a group of cities that had a strong focus on children's rights and children's health and well-being. So the topics that are familiar to many of us. But there's also a second group of cities that were actually more interested in sustainability and community, and in the insight that places that work well for children work well for everyone and are sustainable. I'll come back to that. And then there's a third group of cities, in a way the most interesting, for whom their interest was quite hard-nosed. It was about the long-term economic and demographic prospects of the city. And what they had grasped was the insight that, in essence, a city that is unable to attract and retain families is a city whose long-term future is not great. So I'm just going to say a bit more about some of those headings now, and what they mean. And really, I often start this section by looking at road danger. Still, road danger is the leading cause of the death of children over 5 up to young adults around the world. Even in high-income countries, traffic fatalities cause more deaths than any other single cause. And there's a strong social class gradient. So it's the poorest children that are far more likely to be the victims of road traffic incidents. And just to be clear, this is a systemic problem. This is not a problem about individual children or families. It's about the way we've allowed cars to dominate our human habitats. On a positive note, we know that children who play out are happier than children who don't. And this is a report from a UNICEF report just over a year ago, and it shows you higher levels of happiness, subjective happiness, from children who play out daily compared to children who play out rarely. And that's across about a dozen countries in the OECD, so the rich nations in effect. And we also know that if we ask ourselves what child-friendly cities look like, well, they look a lot like sustainable cities. And this play on words is a way of bringing out that fact. So if we want to make the case for more sustainable cities, then we really should be talking about the benefits for children. So I'm just going to close with a couple final thoughts. One is that I haven't said too much about children's participation, but it's absolutely clear that when we ask ourselves, or when we ask children themselves what they like and what they don't like about cities, they are very clear that their hopes and fears map precisely onto that two-dimensional framework that I've talked about already. So just going to close with a couple of pieces of good news. I think we are seeing a growth in interest in this vision and this approach. I'm working with a team of developers that are building a large mixed-use development in the north of Cambridge that is going to really take some of those ideas from Vauban as sort of strengthened by a children's lens and creating it in a part of England where I think we're going to see some amazing places to live. And I also wanted to mention just a few months ago, we saw the launch here in England of a new body called Active Travel England. You can see its head, Chris Boardman, the Olympian, and it's really interesting to see almost every time you hear Chris speaking publicly about his basic case, he talks about children. He talks about them being the emotional link, and that one of his acid tests of whether his bike lanes or infrastructure is working is, can it be used, and does it want to be used by a competent 12-year-old? So he's taken on board that principle that we've also heard from people like the mayor of Bogota, former mayor of Bogota, Enrique Peñalosa, that the child is an indicator species for cities. And I'm a strong believer in that vision, that in the same way that so if you see a neighborhood like Vauban where there are children of different ages, active and visible in the public space, that's a sign of the health of that habitat, in the same way that if you see salmon swimming up a river. So that's a whistle-stop tour of my book. I'm pleased to be able to share it with you now, and I look forward to discussing these ideas in more detail in the workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim. So we'll now move on to Bolivia. Maria, are you there?
Yes, hi, Christopher. I'm just going to
Hello.
say hi with my camera, but then I'll turn it off because Bolivia has really the worst internet in South America. So if I want to share my screen, I cannot put my camera at the same time. But many of you already know, maybe, the Act Together movement that was started by the Learning for Wellbeing Foundation. So I will go very quickly into what the movement is for those who don't. And then I'll just present what we're doing here in Bolivia and for the Latin American region that actually is very linked to what's happening in Europe right now. So Act Together is a global movement for partnership between generations for a fair and sustainable world. What does this mean? We have been working for a long time in children's participation here in Latin America, but in different places of the world too. We were part of another program that was called CATS, Children as Actors for Transforming Society, for 8 years. And we learned a lot from that experience. We were working on opening spaces of participation, empowering children, but then there was always a small or sometimes big frustration of why isn't it working? Why aren't we really changing? Locally, I agree a lot with our previous speaker that really local change is the one that is the most effective. And we were seeing this potential of children's participation, but the adult world was not really responding to this potential. You all know what children were hearing. We have a lot of consultations, we have a lot of spaces of participation. Children are telling us what they want to see changing in the world. For example, in this survey for Child Rights Connect, that is a little bit before COVID, but these were the most important subjects that came out in what children wanted to see change in the world. But there was not really, this change was not happening. And then COVID came and the situation was even more difficult in the world and in all of these challenges too. You all know that there are different movements of children and young people that are already taking big spaces in the world, especially for climate change, but other subjects too. So how do we do to respond to this change that children and young people are asking, and how do we do this together? So that is how the Act Together movement came to life after all of these experiences in different parts of the world. We'll show you a little bit later. What are we proposing? We're proposing a movement where we partner between generations. For what? For really a changing paradigm of how we work together and how we see really engaged citizenship. How do we change really from local to global? And how do we do this in a different way? Because many of what we have been doing until now has been a bit frustrating for many of us. So we propose a holistic view really from different perspectives, not only from the child-friendly methods that we use, but also seeing all the environments and all the learning that is transformative, but also from people, from this human connection that we have, changing ourselves to really being this change we want to see. And that's a big challenge when we have a lot of things to deconstruct from our adult world. And how do we learn to really connect with this inner child that we have, and how can we connect with children as competent partners to really create this change together? Why intergenerational? Also because we really need well, we're saying in a big sentence, humanity and the planet depends on it, but really have a lot to learn from each other. We all know, we were seeing in the previous presentation too, how do we build our cities, but how do we build our communities, how do we live together, how do we better live together, and how the subject that interests us more in Bolivia, and I will talk about, is how do we build democracy together too. Going to the next one, if this allows me. Yeah. So Act Together is in different parts of the world, as you can see. In Latin America, we're based in Bolivia, but we work with different partners in 9 countries of the region. Every time we have started an Act Together movement locally, we really try to listen to what the local actors have to say, children, young people, adults, and what's the entry point so that the movement is relevant in this local context. In Bolivia, we arrived 4 years ago, where the local context was really favorable because we had a new code, a legislative code for children's rights that had participation as a right, but also as a principle of this code. And it really established a system where children could participate in local governments and in different levels of the governments. We have established by law school government, so every school has to have a school government that is working with the adult board from every school. From this school government, there is the election of children's committees at a municipal level. So every municipality, we have 380 municipalities in Bolivia. Every municipality should have its children's committee that is working at the same level in different subjects that are established by law with the Council of Adults at a municipal level. And then from this children's committee, municipally, they go into departmental committees and then to a national level committee that is working with the Ministry of Justice. So for those who work in participation, you could say that this is a dream system legally. It's been thought from the ground. And it's really great, and it's an example in different parts of the world. But then when it was launched, it was very difficult to implement because participation was not really embedded in the school programs or even in trainings for teachers, or it was the legal code came at a moment where the ground was not really ready for this. But we have been working in different networks to build these school governments and these children's committees for the last 4 years. And now I'll just, whoops, this one. I don't know if you're seeing, yeah, good. So now we did a mapping this year with the help of UNICEF here in Bolivia, and we know that in the last 4 years, there are now 200 children's committee at a municipal level in Bolivia. So we're a bit more than 50% of all the municipalities that exist. And this has come from a very big program that has been launched 3 years ago that is called Citizens in Action. And really the title was very important because it was part of national consultations with all the actors that were working on children's rights, but also community actors, school teachers, parents, also doctors, nurses, and delegations from municipalities and schools from children. So there were big intergenerational consultations for the title of this program. And it really made a beginning and a change in paradigm on how we were speaking about citizenship. Because children, especially the movements of working children, pushed a lot so that this program was called Citizens in Action, because it was not like they were saying we don't become citizens as of art of magic when we are 18. This is we're citizens since we're born, and we have a lot to say, but a lot to do too in our communities. and we want to work with all generations to build better communities. So this program, Citizens in Action, worked in students' governments and the children's committees to strengthen, to build the conditions with especially the adults from local governments. And it was really a great experience of learning in these last 2 years, especially with local government officers, but also ministers of justice that really, really played the game, really changed we did workshops led by children that were working on their inner child, and everyone accepted. And from this, they were working in workshops to do different proposals for laws for schools. There was a big program because in Bolivia there was no schools for the last 2 years. The schools really closed during COVID and didn't reopen for 2 years, and we had a big political crisis throughout this. But the committee stayed, and they really became a source of information, but also of inspiration and also of action for these local governments that are working now. We have from these more than 200 committees that exist today, 30 stories of success, where really these committees are influencing the local governments, where they're really, they already have budgets and budget lines in the local government's planning and budget. And this has shown us that it is really, these systems can be really be done locally and can be really have an effective change in the country in general. Why is this relevant? I think more than before to Europe and the work that is being done also in Europe. I think we're talking, I've been in many different spaces where we were presenting this in Europe in the last few weeks, and we're talking a lot about the democratic response to what is happening right now in Europe, to the lack of belief in the system and there's a lot of worry and the situation of the war, and we were really thinking that the democratic response to this crisis is action, but this action cannot be just one way and cannot be just adults action. It can really we need, as children were saying here, to have citizens from all ages. And this really starts by having a voice and by hearing these citizens from all ages, even if they are very, very young. Julie was talking about engaged citizenship, and that's really the main, our main goal here is how do we build engaged citizenship from even we're starting a program next year with early childhood, and how is this going to influence throughout into adulthood and create these partnerships. So I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go more in depth into the examples of the school governments and the committees in the workshop. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. It's nice, and we welcome you into our circle. It's great to step out of Europe. We've been working in Europe as the ENG for our 15 years, but the time has come to take a much more international stance. We've had the international group of the Alliance for Childhood, but we haven't been able to make these big connections that we're making today. So we look forward to working with you and your group in the future. So we go further across the world to Jane in Australia.
Hello, Chris.
Hi, hello, Jane. No.
Yes, welcome everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this very lovely, beautiful gathering of people very passionate about caring for children and the well-being of children. Here in Australia, I'm on Arakwal country, which is part of the Bundjalung Nation in northern New South Wales near Byron Bay. It's a very beautiful part of the country and very blessed to live in such extraordinary presence of great beauty. So I'm here today to talk about my work. I had an extraordinary experience of finding a solution for my eldest daughter when she was 10 years old. And that led me into working with, after some time, working with Indigenous communities, taking the knowledge. She had gone to a Steiner school and she then had thrived as my other two children had thrived. I took this knowledge and these learnings and developed a program and ran those in Indigenous communities across Australia. And there I saw a phenomenal change in the well-being of parents and children. And one program we ran for 4 years in the outer west of Sydney with children and parents living in housing commission, a lot of violence, a lot of community dysfunction, and both the parents and the children described that 3 hours a week as a lifesaver for their families, for their relationships with their children. It was phenomenal to see. Since then, I've written some books, Growing Greener Children, Parenting as an Art, which takes that knowledge into a wider sphere. Parenting as an Art has been published both in Chinese and in Vietnamese, as well as both here in Australia. And it's looking at a walled-off approach, but making it very accessible to a wide range of people. Today, I have been here to talk about my 2 projects that I've been working on simultaneously that I'm about to launch. But first of all, I'd like to thank Christopher and the Alliance for Childhood People who I've connected with during the course of making my film, Leah Pulkkinen and obviously Tim Gill in the UK. I had the opportunity to travel in 2019 to Finland, and Leah was very kind enough to introduce me to Emily Hallinan and other notaries in the Finnish community talking about education. I'll share that today. I'm going to share a little bit of a little trailer of the film and take you through a quick summary of what I've been doing. I'll just extend. Oh, there we go. Back we go. So Children in the Infinite Game. It's a film about practical solutions to help young people thrive in a changing world. It's a 1-hour social impact documentary film, and it follows 3 young people on the threshold of adolescence with leading creative visionaries across the world. I also look at 3 schools in Australia doing very innovative approaches to education. And the conclusion is that there are solutions, as we know, out there. What the challenge is that those solutions are not very visible to very many people. The solutions that have been discussed and the children highlight in the film are the need for meaningful values and connections, the need to prioritize well-being, to value creativity, and to particularly recognize, which I think is fundamental, children's uniqueness and intuitive wisdom.
I'm just going to show a bit of the film. No, okay.
And then I'll show a bit of the film.
The education system, it is failing millions and millions of innocent children.
It was amazing learning to fly. It was the best thing.
This is the century-old mental model of schooling is that children are empty vessels, and the role of education or schooling is to fill them.
I go into this other dimension and it's just like, it's white everywhere.
In Finland, we wanted to focus more on arts, music, crafts. They can see that the ideas that they develop from their own mind are important and they are valued.
If I could change 3 things in the world, I would make global warming not be a thing.
I've definitely seen an increase in anxiety in children because the basics that children need to grow up healthy, confident, and happy are no longer met.
How to cope with stress in a very changing, technologically driven world.
Assessment is the killer of children.
Core skills for the future: oral communication, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, creativity.
The ongoing infinite game, children go out into the world versatile and creative and proficient at navigating the world.
So the film is in its almost final stages. It's in the last couple of weeks, and looking forward to having some feedback in the workshop presentation. It's had wonderful reception from different people that I've screened, had initial screenings, and is much needed, both for parents, for educators, and those going into higher education to look at the broader issues of what the problems are with facing young children, well, their well-being and their education. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you, Jane, to you and your movie.
Yes, thank you very much, Jane. Forgive me. I don't know what time it is in Australia, but it's probably not very, very socially timed for us. But thank you for joining us.
Yes, midnight here, Christopher.
Yes, right. Okay, so we'll move on then, and we'll go to Olena in Ukraine. She is in Lviv. We were a bit worried earlier because we thought we'd lost her, but I believe she is here now. So Olena, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can I present my slides? So first of all, I want to thank you very much to you personally, to all of you personally, and to your countries for the support of Ukraine, for help, and that we understand that we have a chance to have a victory in our country. And today is a holiday. You have 25th anniversary, and it's difficult to say some worst things, but I had to do this. I am a beginner in your community, and I understand that you are working for a better future because you're thinking about childhood and about well-being of children. So in Ukraine, there was the same. We have continuously worked for a better future, which is now at risk. And we were very proud of our steps because we become a more open society. My childhood was in the Soviet Union, and it was very different to childhood of my grandchild and my children. Education in Ukraine in the period of peaceful time in general has experienced a focal shift from totalitarian ideology to democracy and pluralism. Current educational reforms that began in 2016 was brought many changes to Ukraine's education based on European values. And we're really happy of this. We have also many support and help from different countries who give us experts and help us to change our education. This is Poland, Netherlands, Portuguese, England, and many other countries. We are working, and we new Ukrainian educational standard that was in 2021 based on European Union's key competences and on European values appeared, and we were happy. But at that moment, we have very nice schools with good environment, with well-being for children. But at this moment, our school was destroyed. This is real picture from a school from Ukrainian village, Zeleny High, between Kherson and Mykolaiv. It's only 5 kilometers from the front line, and it's reality. So we have a problem, very large problem, and we understand that all the world and also support us. Every day, over the past 20 days, in Ukraine, more than 70,000 children have become refugees. And every minute, 55 children fleeing the country. This is not my word, this is not my numbers, but it's it said James Elder, spokespersons from the United Children Fund, UNICEF. Yes, really, we had previously that safety housing, very nice cities that are friendly to the children, and so on. Medical care are at the top of the priorities. But for everybody, for us, we were very surprising when a number of families who was in very hard situation, they also keeping up with school, and they say that school are very needed, and this is what we can help children in the very hard situation. When the war started, the Ukraine's Ministry of Education declared a 2 weeks school holidays. But since then teaching has resumed remotely. And what we understand when we see our children as refugees in the part of Ukraine that seem to us be peaceful, it's the part where now I live. This piece very strange because today there was a few air alarms and also bombed, but it's not so hard as in the eastern part of Ukraine. But we understand that inclusion into education, that need of education for children is not about learning. Children needs learning needs, they have social needs, they have emotional needs, and our children wants to be at school. Let's try to understand that 2 years before we have a problems with COVID, and also we have a problems with the schools, with visiting schools. How we can upholding the rights to education and training from harming children. First of all, education staff or schools, we had to understand that it's fundamental in times of conflict or war. Education is essential to the immediate response to the children's suffering, because war does not just wreck lives, it wrecks education too. And also, you see that UNICEF report said that 5.7 million children are out of school due to the nationwide closure, and more than 2.5 million children have been internally displaced within Ukraine. The EU countries and Ukraine have already taken a number of important decisions. And I want to say once more, thank you for everybody. Thank you for every country in Europe who help us. And what we see in this situation, we have challenges and possibilities. So education, we had think about educational policies inside Ukraine, and also about educational policies in refugee country. They have similarities, but also they are different. They have and having similarities and differences, we understand that all of them have trying to give the opportunity to keep learning and access to education. And this education, it's very important, had to be based on European values and also on Ukrainian background, because in one moment, children coming from one country to another, in one moment, they have no house, they have no roof under his head. Educational policy, we needed to support and provided education to help keep Ukrainian teachers. Our teachers also, some of them now in your countries, some of them are staying at home, and many of these teachers have no place to work. They have no classes, they have no schools, and also the roof on the head. So we had to think about these teachers and how they can be helpful in this situation or in refugee hosting countries. And one more priority is to offer refugee children a place where they feel secure and can access to education, together with addressing psychological trauma and also language barrier. Mostly our children studied English, and they coming to Europe and see Portuguese, Germany language, Polish language, many different languages. Maybe some of them they never had. They never had these languages, and they had to understand the instructions in this country. So this required a comprehensive approach which combined some limited elements. These limited elements, taking from the scientific works, are reception and admission, prepare education institution and educational staff to include refugee children, prepare education system to include Ukrainian teachers, and early childhood education and care staff, target activities facilitating inclusion of refugee children in education, reaching out to refugee families. It's very needed. It's very needed in Ukraine and also very needed in their countries. And measures relevant for early childhood education and care in particular, such as information and financial support to access to this education. It's a really difficult situation in the country. Our children now, even in the parts where it's peaceful, they didn't come face to face to school. All our schools are online, learning and study. But Ukrainian children are still in school despite the war. And here also a very large helpful of the refugee hosting countries who help our children to have this opportunity. And you see that the first decision of the Ministry of Education was that all children who are now studying outside their own school and abroad will receive a document about completing the school year. it was many debates, many decisions, but we understand that our children need to have these documents, and all their grades will be recorded regardless of their each children is studying today at any other school which conduct in person, mixed or remote class or external education. But in this case, we need to cooperate, as Ukrainian Ministry of Education had to cooperate with your ministries, with schools, to understand how this document will look like. Since the education process has begun, firstly it was stopped, but it has begun to resume in the region where the security situation allowed it. The decision as to where and how classes should be held were made by regional administration and educational institution. And students who have left their homes can resume their studies in their temporary location of residence, both in Ukraine and abroad. And sometimes we think where it will be better for children, abroad or in our own country, in country where is war, or in a country that it's peaceful. And we know that nearly 3 million, a majority of countries' school-aged children have shown up for online learning, at least a bit. The country is even broadcasting video lessons or television. We understand that we know some cases when children coming in abroad and didn't know, and they have no any experience in the language of the country, trying to stay home and not to go to the school, trying to stay home to and studied online in Ukrainian schools. And it's a question: stay with your classmates or go to a new school? Stay you with classmates virtually or go to a new school face to face? Sometimes it's very difficult to understand for children what is better for them. So we have very good practice, a very good practice that in some countries, including Poland, Bulgaria, mainly Poland, and in safer parts of Ukraine, there are informal settings that resemble the learning hubs set up in the US during the pandemic. It's sometimes strange that in this situation, the experience of pandemic helps us. And also we hear students remote lessons with their teachers, classmates, and it's such hubs also that have support for the mothers. It also very needed it in these countries. But we have a problem of the country of their native country of Ukraine. Lessons interrupted but air raid sirens, but also when they are in other countries, they sometimes even didn't understand what about speaking on a lesson. So we have two differences. Poland received more than 1 million children from Ukraine, with more arriving every day. There are several different options. Some newcomers are enrolling directly in Polish school, and the children who are from the west part of Ukraine understanding Polish language. And also Poland is also created classes with all Ukrainian children and Ukrainian teachers. It's very good, who have also just arrived. This will follow Ukraine's curriculum, and this what I speak about new Ukrainian school, new vision of Ukrainian school, and they will be taught in Ukrainian. This also very good experience. So children, their parents have a choice. And this choice help them have a dream or have the hope to return home and to not to interrupt their education, their Ukrainian education. So this is many problems, and we had to find answers together with you. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to present you our challenges and problems and opportunities, and to have a help as a very good European experts, to have a help how to find the ways for a better future of our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elena. Are we back on our screen, Chiara?
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Elena, for your description of the situation that you find yourself in and your compatriots as well, and the children. And I want to assure you of our continued interest and support in your work. And actually, we're very pleased that you have also turned to us as a group. And we welcome you into our circle. And I'm sure many of us will do what we can to assist in such a terrible time for you all. So thank you for joining us, Elena. And as you see in the presentation later, we'll be talking a bit more. Before we move to Brazil, I'd just like to say a few words. The way the Alliance works. The Alliance works through personal initiative. Nearly all the work is voluntary. People give their time and energy and capacities to help each other. But that makes it quite difficult to run as a network. It's not quite a traditional organization, it's a network. So at the beginning, we managed to work very well internationally. We had Joan Arman in the United States, who Tim has alluded to, a very strong person indeed, who united many child experts in America in the common purpose. We had Uta Kramer in Brazil, and again, we paid visits to Brazil, and there was a very strong connection. So we had 4 poles in the early years of the Alliance. One was the UK, starting in the UK with Marion and myself. There was Joan in the United States. There was Uta and our colleagues in Brazil. And there was Michael Matis and the rest of us from the European Network Group in Brussels. So we had 4 groups working very closely together. But it does depend on personal initiative, and that is always not as strong as one would wish. People have families, professions, and sometimes the groups drift apart. We noticed that in the last years, our international committee is finding it more and more difficult to make contact. Brazil and United States seem to have lost us. So we want to use this opportunity again. This is hosted by the Brussels group, the ENG, on behalf of the international group. And we're hoping having this international consciousness now beyond Europe, across the whole world, will help reunite us to work together on that level, as well as the work we do in Brussels. So I just wanted to make that clear. And we're very happy that Brazil is back with us, back in the fold, and that we're working more strongly together with them in the future. So Uta, over to you.
So yeah, I would like to share with you a little bit of how we are currently organizing here. And actually, we work in Brazil as a network, as Alliance is a network, but we share that model of a network throughout Brazil. So we have nuclei and members in all these points of the maps where the green pins are. And we consider this a very dynamic and continuous movement. We say that it is like the time of childhood, continuous and dynamic. And I get something very important from Christopher's speech just now, that groups sometimes fall apart because they depend on people's initiative. And this is how we see the groups here in Brazil. Sometimes they are close to us and working, sometimes they are not close and they drift apart for any number of reasons. And we accommodate this, we welcome this movement as well in the network of Nuclei. So we have people in around 30 locations in Brazil currently, and this is how we are able to mirror the diversity of cultures within Brazil. Brazil is a very, very large territory, and there are very different cultural realities, social and economic realities. We even say that there are many childhoods. We use childhoods in the plural here on purpose, to give the idea that there isn't only one way to live childhood in Brazil. There are many different ways. And the people's actions are within the principle of autonomy. So people can do their activities in the name of the Alliance for Childhood, not exactly as they please. They follow principles, they follow institutional guidelines that we provide, but they mirror their own realities for that. So we have groups in the Northeast that are very grassroots, and they take children to play in the squares. And we have other groups that are more linked to universities, and they act more on formation, sensibilization activities. And the important thing is that all of the actions in all of the groups are linked by the letter of principles. We have a Portuguese translated version of Joan Almond's letter of principles that inspire everybody here and is very referred to. And this is how we translate to people what is the way we want to look at children. And it inspires people's actions within their own realities, within their own interests. The letter of principles inspire people to work on their activities. And there is an executive secretariat that support this group of people, this group of Nuclei. We are not above the Nuclei. We exist under them to support them and to give them breath to make the movement continuous. And we are in our 21st anniversary here in 2022. In the second semester, we will celebrate our majority, let's say. And like this, can you see that is my screen changing for you? Okay. And I'm sorry, my English is very rusty. I used to speak better English before. And so a few of the principles on how we translate how we see children to people. And I highlighted in yellow a few of the very key words here. We want to talk a lot about the enchantment of childhood to people. Enchantment in the meaning of wonder, not obviously in the meaning of magic. And it's a difficult word to translate. In Portuguese, enchantment doesn't have that magic spell meaning. In Portuguese, enchantment means wonder, more like that. So we want to bring the enchantment of childhood. We want to inspire people and offer platforms so that they can have practical experiences and that mobilize adults loving attention to children's everyday acts. So we are talking about here about learning, playing, eating, and sleeping as the four essential pillars of childhood. We want to look at child as a whole through these four pillars, right? As how they interact, how obviously play is throughout all the pillars, but how they interact and how we can look at children with this sense of enchantment and wonder through these four pillars. And obviously our mission is to sensitize society to the importance of that children are able to live a dignified and healthy childhood and live it to the fullest. And also we want to talk about the role of a culture of peace, how children are important to a culture of peace, to environmental sustainability, and to respect for all differences. That's the base on what we act. And we've been working with this sort of institutional strategy. We call it the ABCD, because in Portuguese, learning, play, eating, and sleeping stand for ABCD. It doesn't translate well in English. And it's not an ABCD because, oh, ABCD is a children thing. It's funny and it's childhoodish. No, because learning is A in Portuguese, playing is B, eating is C, and sleeping is D. And those are the four pillars. And we want to share inspirational knowledge on these 4 pillars and promote meaningful experiences. And how do we promote these meaningful experiences? Is through the ABCD calendar. So we have 4 weeks along 5 actually weeks along the year. The Learn Week is in February. The World Play Week is obviously our main moment in May, around the International Play Day. The Eat Week is in August. And then there's a 5th element, which is the Childhood and Culture of Peace Week in October, and the Sleep Week in December. In all of those weeks, our communication team organize materials, we write texts, we interview people that specialize in those areas of childhood, and we publish inspirational knowledge that inspire people's action. And we invite them to create their own actions, create their own activities under the 4 themes. And people gather and offer their own activities with total autonomy. So the idea is that we build collectively on these 4 pillars. The idea is that it's not us it's not the Alliance for Childhood Brazil who is promoting the World Play Week, for example. We are building a structure and inviting people to participate, but the week happens as people participate, as people create and put in action talks and activities for the children and everything. I want to highlight this picture in the slide. It's very meaningful because this adult and this child in this picture, they are playing with cardboard boxes that come from a toy shop. It's a toy shop that's very seminal here in Brazil. It was one of the first toy shops that specialized in educational toys for children. Mr. Altino, who was the founder of this shop, was in our council for a very long time until he passed away, unfortunately. And this is an activity they made on the World Play Week many years ago, using the boxes. The children played in front of the shop with the boxes that the toys came in. And I think that's very meaningful. So the World Play Week itself is our main moment in the year. We've been promoting this since 2009. And in 10 years later, in 2019, we estimate that over 270,000 people participated in activities. And again, because we have this principle of autonomy, people can, as per our invitation, people can put together whatever action they want with autonomy. This number of people participating may be bigger, but we can only count what we are told that the people are doing, and they don't necessarily need to ask for our permission or to tell us that they are doing an activity. We really set the structure and invite people to participate. And this is how the World Play Week can take up all of the country and can take up all of the diversity of children and childhoods that there is in Brazil. This is how it really reflects the diversity of what is interesting to each person that accepts our invitation and takes part in creating and putting into practice an activity. And it's a space for disseminating the importance of free play, to defend the children's right to play. It's a moment of collective building the actions. It's also mobilization and taking part in the society, because we believe that play is how children take part in the society. And it's a structure, the World Play Week, that invites play in all forms and in all kinds of spaces. And besides the network of Alliance members, we've been gathering different partners. Public authorities have been taking part in the World Play Week. Civil society important partners such as the SESC is a very important institution in Brazil that is organized by trade entrepreneurs, and it's in the whole of Brazil, and in many cities in Brazil, it's the only alternative of leisure that people have, leisure and culture. And they participate, and all of the unities in Brazil make actions, put activities into practice. They are very important partner. And also, the World Play Week is sensitizing society to political incidents. In over 40 cities in Brazil today, the World Play Week is a public policy. And we are currently supporting a group of 10 cities so that they can mobilize and approve the laws that institute the World Play Week as a public policy in those cities. And instituting the week as a public policy allows the city to incorporate play as a whole, to debate the importance of play as a city needs many public authorities. And it also, the World Play Week needs to, when the World Play Week is put into practice in such a level of the public authorities, it leaves marks for the city throughout the year, as in urban planning and all of other departments. And then I want to highlight something I forgot to highlight here, that the World Play Week and the Child and Culture of Peace Week, those that are highlighted in yellow, are the only ones that we have financing currently. It's difficult for us in Brazil to find financing for our actions because of this character of a network where people can act according to their own interests. Because of that, we can not show the faces of the children we attend and we support. Because of this feature, it's very difficult for us to gather financing. And in order for financiers to finance actions related to children, they want to see exactly which are the children you are attending, how many of them, and everything. And this character of autonomy makes that difficult. So we currently have only one partner that support us with financing, and it supports the World Play Week and the Child of Culture of Peace Week. All of the other actions we do on our own time, within our own efforts. And also want to highlight the character of collective building that the World Play Week and all of the ABCD learning, playing, eating, and sleeping calendar works. And all of the weeks, we publish inspirational knowledge and invite people to put into action their own activities. So this character of collective building is very important. And this character of autonomy is also very important for us. So we set dates, we set thematics every year to inspire different aspects. We launch the campaign, we systematize knowledge, we publish inspirations, we talk to different partners to gather them to act, and we invite society to take part. And with that invitation, people's institutions, and our members, collectives, public authorities, they can join and create and put into practice their activities with total autonomy. This is how the World Play Week gets big, and we are trying to get the ABCD calendar the other weeks also as big, but they are still a little bit small. And I want to highlight this picture here, which is in one of the AFC members in the northeast of Brazil. In one World Play Week, she invited one of the mothers in the school to sew dolls' clothes, and that was a very beautiful action. And I think I ran up time. I wanted to show a few pictures for you. I want to highlight this one only because I took too much time. This happened also in Nuclei in the northeast of Brazil. This group of children went to visit, it's difficult to translate this. they went to visit an elder. We call those elders masters here in Brazil. He was an elder that a popular culture elder, popular culture as in folk culture, grassroots culture, not as in pop culture. And he taught the children to build this toy, which they are stepping on, which is a coconut. It's a coconut foot. And they broke the coconuts and tie them around ropes, and they walk with the coconut shells, making the same sound of horses. It's a very traditional toy that they taught them to create. And we hope to promote actions around play, learn, eat, and sleep that can look at these wonderful moments of childhood, that can respect the story, but that can also be enchanted by what children are today. The modern world is not losing its enchantments, and the children are not losing their wonder, but we need to look at them as they are now in the world of now, and be able to bring to light the wonder of our look to them, regardless in which reality they are. And that's it. And I want to ask if Utes are able to talk. Are you able to talk, Ute?
Well, why not we just have our break now, and Uta then can come in 10 minutes when we come back. And if she's got something she'd like to say or write, she'll be able to pass it on at the beginning of the next session. Is that fine, Uta? I hope. Right. Just to say thank you very much from that, Leticia. I must say, when we started the Alliance, we actually visited Brazil quite a few times, and we were very impressed with the vitality and creativity. We know there's a lot of social problems, of course, but it was always wonderful to see how things just bubbled up in people's souls, and that you've shown very clearly. And it's wonderful to be in contact with you again, and I hope we can continue that. Just to say, after the break, we have the workshops. We'll have a 10-minute break. We've been sitting here for some time. We've had to slightly change the workshop program. We've had to be creative in the background while people have been speaking, but Chiara will describe what that is after the break. So exactly 10 minutes and no longer, please. Okay, and then we'll go on from there. Thank you. Uta, are you able to speak to us now, or would it be in writing? We can't hear you at all. No, it doesn't work. I mean, it would be great if you could say something about the sun image, as it's so important. But we can't hear you. Sad. Okay, so Uta is unable to use her microphone. And she wanted to say something about the sun motif. And Uta and I come from the same stable, as it were, of Waldorf education. And the sun plays an important theme. At the beginning of the day in a Waldorf school, the children say a verse. And for the younger children, it starts, the sun with loving light. For the older children, this verse begins, I look into the world wherein there shines the sun. And this is an important image for our children because we all share the sun. And the sun shines on different parts of the world during the course of 24 hours. Everybody, if we exclude some adverse weather, everybody gets the advantages of the sun. It shines on all of us and it shines within all of us. And that's what that motif of the sun was there to depict. She did it in a way that has a childlike quality, simple, and yet it's a uniting factor in all our lives. And that's why we've adopted it as the motif of our work together. So we go on to the next step. Chiara, how do the workshops now go?
Yes, we have split you according to your choice, but to balance, we had some changes. So we will have at the end 5 workshops the workshop 1, it's with 6 people. The workshop 3, it's with the 6 people. The 4th with 7 participants, the 5th with 7, and the 6th with 4th. So what we are going to ask you is to run your workshop and make the introduction, as probably all the facilitators has already received the guidelines, but I will share my screen to show you again the document that you have received, and so make also the other participants aware how we are going to proceed. So the first step is actually to introduce your, wait, I will move it a bit up. Yes, okay. The first step is the introduction of your workshop. And so we ask you really to take 15 minutes to introduce the topic and your and the topic of discussion, the conversation, describing your activity, your work, and whatever you want to share with participants. Then you start the conversation, you start the debate, you start the discussion, and try to reply to, or to fill in these 3 sentences that I put also in the chat. And they are the one highlighted in gray here. It's the quality of childhood through different lens of your workshop show that is essential to promote and support the well-being of children. Is harming the well-being of children, needs adults and or policymakers to, let's try to fill in with 1 word this sentence at the end of your workshop. I put them also in the chat. If you wish, as next step, you can, according to your participants, choose a rapporteur who can write down this sentence in the chat, or we will try to use the whiteboard tools of Zoom. So if you wish, you can write directly on the whiteboard, or I can do it by following your instruction that you have put in the chat box. And at the end, we will set up a manifesto and poem that we are going to build up together with you. I stop sharing my screen. I will split you into breakout room. You have 45 minutes, and take note of the sentences in the chat. And I wish you a good work, and don't hesitate to come back to me if you face problem. I open the breakout rooms.
Nara, I think it's more like 40 minutes now.
40 minutes.
40 minutes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's try to save the, okay, to put what we achieved, what you have achieved during the workshop. Ari is writing their sentence, but I'm glad to tell you that Mr. Georging is here.
Yes, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Mr. Gerking. Thank you very much for joining us. We've been having quite a effective time and full of rich thoughts, and we very much welcome your support and participation for this last part of our conference.
Mr. Gerking, happy to have you here.
Ja, ich freue mich auch, dass ich bei Ihnen bin. Leider konnte ich nicht eher kommen.
I'm delighted to be with you as well. Unfortunately, I was not able to be there with you earlier.
Weil wir Ausschusssitzungen hatten, unter anderem natürlich auch wieder das Thema Schaltgarantie.
We had actually our committee meeting, employment committee, and we have discussed child guarantee during our committee meeting. That's what I can tell you.
Wow.
Ich hoffe, und ich habe gerade schon am Rande so ein bisschen mitbekommen, dass Sie einen sehr interessanten und spannenden Nachmittag verbracht haben und interessanten Workshops.
I have heard that you had an interesting afternoon. Captivating workshops have been part of the program.
Wäre gerne dabei gewesen, um das eine oder andere mit aufzugreifen und aufzunehmen.
I would have loved to be there with you and to discuss the one or other aspect with you.
Denn gerade von solchen Inputs leben wir Politiker ja.
Because it's precisely these inputs that help us as politicians.
Also noch einmal ganz, ganz lieben Dank an die Organisatoren. Ich bin mir sicher, dass Sie in gewohnter Weise, wie all die Jahre vorher auch, diese Veranstaltung bestens gemeistert haben.
I'd like to thank the organizers for this afternoon's discussions and event. I'm sure that you have brilliantly managed the organization of this afternoon's discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Gelking, and we are really curious to know what the news are about the child guarantee, because we know that there are a lot of developments there, and we are glad that you can say and be there, say these few words and be there with us. We are now to proceed with collecting what we asked to participants to work on different topics, on how childhood can see from different lenses. And so we thank you so much. And if you wish, you can stay and see our the end of our event. And we try to collect all the feedback into a whiteboard that I'm going to open and try to, it's my first time that I use it. So I will ask also the help of the participant in filling this whiteboard. So thank you so much, Helmut. I start, Christopher, I will open.
Yes, please.
And try to put, okay.
Also ich kann noch mal ganz kurz, wolltest du noch mal hin?
Yeah. Well, actually, if you have a second.
Yes, please.
Was vielleicht noch ganz wichtig ist, wegen der Schaltgarantie, was wir im Ausschuss besprochen haben, das kann ich in 1, 2 Sätzen ganz kurz sagen.
I might briefly report from what we discussed in Employment Committee on Child Guarantee right now.
Ist auch auf Facebook, meine Ansprache dazu ist auch auf Facebook zu sehen unter Helmut Geuting.
Well, actually, I've got a video already on Facebook related to this matter.
Also es wurde der soziale Dialog von Kommissar Schmidt mit dem Empel-Ausschuss für das kommende Jahr, die 9 Schwerpunkte festgelegt.
Actually, we had a discussion with Mr. Commissioner Schmidt about the social dialogue and the focus points for the forthcoming year.
Und ich hatte bemängelt, dass wir einen großen Blumenstrauß haben mit althergebrachten Sachen, aber das Wichtigste, nämlich die Schaltgarantie, nicht mit einem Wort erwähnt wurde.
And I actually criticized that we got a whole bunch of flowers presented from Commissioner Schmidt, but that this bunch of flowers faded away because it was only about things from the past. And child guarantee hadn't been mentioned with a single word with him.
Er ist zuständig als Kommissar für die Schaltgarantie, europäische Schaltgarantie. Und jetzt, gerade nach Pandemie und Krieg, wo die Kinder und Familien so viel zu leiden haben, spielt es im Europäischen Parlament beim sozialen Dialog für das kommende Jahr keine Rolle. Und das darf nicht passieren.
Actually, I stated that right now, after this COVID pandemic, after the war, where families suffered a lot, in European Parliament, there wasn't a single word within the context of social dialogue about child guarantee this afternoon. Not a single word and nothing is foreseen really for the forthcoming year within this context. And Mr. Schmidt is responsible for child guarantee.
Und daran sehen Sie, wie wichtig Ihre Veranstaltung heute war, zeitgleich, und wie wichtig auch unsere Arbeit im Ausschuss ist, damit wir immer wieder die Schaltgarantie auf die Tagesordnung setzen.
And that's why your event this afternoon is so important, and why the committee work is so important. We've actually got to make sure that child guarantee is always on the agenda.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gelking. Indeed, we are planning also for our next event to focus, to put highlight on the child guarantee from different perspectives. This is our intention also for our next event in September.
And thank you for giving us your time, Mr. Gelking, and we look forward to continually working with you in the Parliament. Chiara, I think we don't have time for everybody to say the sentence. Should we just ask the rapporteurs to make sure that you are sent either by chat or email, that you get the full sentences?
I was proposing the same, since we are really running of time and we don't have time to collect here in one moment all the sentences filled. I would kindly, if rapporteur agree, to send me email on the report so we can collect and come back to you with a proper document where all the inputs are collected. Do you agree?
Okay, I think everybody agrees. That's fine. So we come to the last few minutes of our time together, which has been very inspiring and wonderful to see the reach across the world, like the sun image, which I described earlier. As I said earlier, if there's no initiative, there's no alliance. And it's wonderful to see so many people with initiative and a sense of responsibility for children and childhood in so many parts. And I just hope we can use the event today to keep us together in some form. So with the ENG and the international group, we will think about the results of today, how the meeting has gone, and contact you again in the hope that we can rebuild and connect more fully than we have managed in the last few years. So thank you very much. And now to finish with just the very last words I'm giving to Clara. Remember in the invitation letter, I described how this, what we call the poem, arose. Just by chance, people's odd thought suddenly composed itself through Joan's work into something that's coherent and inspiring. I'm asking Clara to read that original poem, and you all can find it on the website and on our publications there to inspire us to continue our work together. So thank you very much, and Clara, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Christopher, and I will also share it so people can read it as I'm speaking it. Childhood is a time for learning about the essentials, about the heavenly world and the earthly, about goodness, beauty, and truth. Childhood is a time to be loved and to love, to express fear and to learn trust, to be allowed to be serious and calm, and to celebrate with laughter and joy. Children have a right to dream, and they need time to grow at their own pace. They have the right to make mistakes and the right to be forgiven. Children need to help to develop self-mastery, to transform themselves and bring forth their highest capacities. Children have a right to be spared violence and hunger, to have a home and protection. They need help to grow up healthily with good habits and sound nutrition. Children need people to respect, adults whose example and loving authority they follow. They need a range of experience, tenderness and kindness, boldness and courage, and even mischief and misbehavior. Children need time for receiving and giving. for belonging and participating. They need to be part of a community and they need to be individuals. They need privacy and sociability. They need time to rest and time to play, time to do nothing, and time to work. They need moments for devotion and room for curiosity. They need protective boundaries and freedom for creativity. They need to be introduced to a life of principles and given the freedom to discover their own. They need a relationship to the earth, to animals, and to nature. And they need to unfold as human beings within the community. The spirit of childhood is to be protected and nurtured. It is an essential part of every human being and needs to be kept alive.
Thank you, Clara. Those words resound, and I hope they resound within our hearts and souls over the time that is to come. I just want to remind you that if you want to make a financial contribution in the letter of invitation, we are trying to support a particular initiative where Latvian volunteers take medicaments to Ukraine to help illnesses, even diabetes, medicine is short. So just to remind people that is, if you want to make a financial contribution, that's where we'll give our support. So thank you all very much for attending, speaking, listening, participating. And we feel that joyousness. When that poem was created, we felt joy in the room, just spontaneous joy. And I hope you've experienced this in the same way, that we can do something together. Yes, that hope can be alive. And just to finish with those words I read at the beginning, to make hope possible rather than despair convincing. So let's make hope possible. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I wish you all a good evening. Thank you.